The champagne-soaked laughter of New York's elite had a particular pitch sharp enough to cut through crystal, soft enough to hide secrets. I'd learned to recognize it over 8 years of planning their galas, their fundraisers, their carefully orchestrated displays of wealth. The Astoria Grand Hotel smelled like money tonight. Imported roses, aged bourbon, and the subtle musk of designer perfume that cost more per ounce than my monthly rent. My tablet vibrated with another vendor confirmation as I moved through the crowd, a ghost in a simple black dress, present but invisible. That's how event planners survived in this world we made magic happen while disappearing into the background. 8 years of coordinating New York's most exclusive events had taught me to recognize the difference between a routine evening and one that would shatter everything. This was supposed to be routine. "Mom, can I have another one of those little cakes?" I turned to find Vivienne perched on a velvet bench near the dessert display, her forest green dress pooling around her like she was a princess in a fairy tale. At 8 years old, she'd spent more evenings at fancy venues than most adults, patient and observant in ways that made guilt twist in my chest. She deserved better than a mother who brought her to work because there was no other option, who'd built a business out of sheer necessity and student loans I'd still be paying off when she graduated high school. "One more, sweetheart," I said, checking my watch. 8:47 p.m. "Then you can sketch in your notebook until we're done here." My best friend and business partner, Rachel Kim, materialized beside me with her signature efficiency. "Caterers are asking about the main course timing, and Mrs. Pemberton wants to know if we can move her table closer to the stage." She lowered her voice. "Also, you look like you're about to throw up. Still freaking out about who's hosting this thing?" "I'm fine." The lie tasted like ashes. Rachel's dark eyes narrowed. She'd been there through everything: the pregnancy, the sleepless nights, the slow climb from broke veterinary student to successful entrepreneur. She knew what it cost me to be here tonight. "It's a huge room, Rose. Chances are you won't even see him." The sound of shifting energy made me look toward the entrance. The ballroom doors opened, and Alessandro Moretti walked in like winter personified, cold, inevitable, beautiful in the way dangerous things often are. 2 bodyguards flanked him, their presence unnecessary given the way the crowd parted instinctively. He wore a black tuxedo that had clearly been tailored by someone who understood that wealth wasn't about ostentation. It was about the perfect fit, the subtle details, the quiet certainty of power. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. My tablet slipped. I caught it at the last second, fingers numb. 8 years. 8 years of building walls around the memory of him, of the 3 months we'd spent together that felt like a lifetime. 8 years since he'd walked out of my apartment at dawn, promising to call, promising everything would be okay. He never called, never explained. Just vanished like he'd never existed, leaving me pregnant and alone with nothing but questions that had no answers. "Rose?" Rachel's hand closed around my elbow. "Breathe. Just breathe." But I couldn't breathe. Because Alessandro's gaze was sweeping the room with the practiced assessment of someone who always knew where the exits were, who always calculated threats and advantages. And when those winter-gray eyes found mine across the crowd, I watched him go absolutely still. Recognition hit him like a physical blow. I saw his jaw clench, saw something that might have been shock or grief or rage flash across his face before his expression locked down into careful neutrality. But his eyes stayed on me, and in them, I saw the question he couldn't ask in a room full of people. "Is it real? Is it you?" Vivienne chose that moment to slide off her bench, her sketchbook forgotten. She'd been studying the room with the intense focus she brought to everything, cataloging details the way I'd taught her. My observant, brilliant daughter who asked too many questions and saw too much. "Mom," she said, tugging my hand. "That man keeps staring at you." "Vivi, stay close," I began, but she was already moving. She'd seen the photos, the ones I kept hidden in a drawer in my bedroom, the ones I'd shown her when she asked about her father. Pictures of a younger Alessandro, before the lines around his mouth, before the weight of whatever he'd become had settled on his shoulders. She'd studied those photos with the same intensity she brought to her art, memorizing every detail. I watched in slow-motion horror as my 8-year-old daughter walked directly toward the most dangerous man in the room. Rachel swore softly beside me. I tried to move, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. The crowd seemed to sense something shifting, conversations faltered, heads turned. Alessandro's bodyguards moved to intercept, but he raised one hand, stopping them. His attention was fixed entirely on the little girl in the green velvet dress approaching him with fearless determination. Vivian stopped 3 feet away, tilted her head in that particular way she had, and studied him with open curiosity. Then she spoke, her voice clear and certain in the sudden hush that had fallen around them. "Excuse me, Mr. Moretti. My name is Vivian Powell." She paused, and I saw her gather her courage. "I know you're my daddy." The ballroom went silent. Alessandro's face drained of all color, absolutely bloodless. His eyes locked on Vivian, taking in her dark curls, her brown eyes that were mirrors of his own, the determined set of her chin that she'd inherited directly from him. I watched understanding crash over him like a wave. The timeline, the resemblance, the impossible truth standing in front of him in a velvet dress. Then his gaze snapped to mine across the crowd. The question in his eyes had transformed into something raw and devastating. "You had my child. Our child. And I never knew." Time fractured. The elegant gala dissolved into white noise. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only stand there while 8 years of carefully constructed distance collapsed in the space between us. His lips shaped my name, Rose, though I couldn't hear it over the blood pounding in my ears. Rachel grabbed my arm. Rose, you need to move. Everyone's watching." She was right. 200 of New York's elite were witnessing the most private moment of my life play out like theater. I forced my legs to work, crossing the ballroom floor toward my daughter and the man who'd abandoned us both. Alessandro's expression was unreadable now, the shock locked away behind the cold mask he showed the world. But his eyes stayed on Vivian, drinking in details as if trying to memorize every feature. "I think," he said, his voice rough and carefully controlled, "we need to speak privately. Now." It wasn't a request. His consigliere, a lean man with calculating eyes, appeared at his elbow, already assessing the situation. "Boss, perhaps." "Now, Marco." Alessandro's tone left no room for argument. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something that might have been pleading. "Please, Rose, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes." As if 8 years of silence could be explained in 5 minutes. But Vivian's hand was in mine, squeezing tight, and she was looking up at Alessandro with a mixture of wonder and uncertainty. She deserved answers. Even if I wasn't ready to hear them, she deserved to know why her father had never been there. 5 minutes, I agreed, my voice steadier than I felt. Alessandro nodded and gestured toward a door off the main ballroom. Rachel started to follow, but I shook my head. "Stay with the event. Make sure everything runs smoothly. I'll be back." She looked like she wanted to argue, but she squeezed my shoulder and melted back into the crowd. Alessandro's bodyguards created a corridor through the whispering guests, and we walked in tense silence toward the private study. The door closed behind us with a heavy finality. Alessandro turned to face us, and for a moment, the careful control slipped. I saw exhaustion in the lines around his eyes, saw something that might have been anguish in the way his hands clenched at his sides. He looked at Vivienne the way a drowning man looks at air. "How old is she?" His voice cracked on the question. 8. The word came out cold. She turned 8 3 weeks ago. I watched him do the math. Watched him understand that I would have been 2 months pregnant when he disappeared. His jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. "Rose, don't." I held up one hand, stopping whatever excuse he was about to offer. "Don't you dare tell me you're sorry. Don't you dare pretend you didn't have a choice." "I didn't." The words exploded out of him. "Rose, I swear to God, I didn't have a choice. My father—" He stopped, glanced at Vivienne, seemed to recalibrate. "My father discovered our relationship. He gave me an ultimatum. Come home and take my place in the family, or you would be killed. Those were my options. Stay with you and watch you die, or disappear and keep you safe." The room tilted. "What?" The word barely made it past my lips. Don Moretti didn't tolerate loose ends. Alessandro's voice had gone flat, emotionless, the only way he could apparently say these words. He'd already had people watching us. He knew everything, where you lived, where you worked, your class schedule. He made it very clear what would happen if I refused to fall in line. I stared at him, trying to reconcile the boy I'd loved with this man claiming his father had threatened my life. "So you just left? Without explaining? Without giving me a choice? If I'd told you, you would have insisted on staying together. You would have fought." His eyes met mine, and in them I saw old grief. And my father would have made good on his threat. "I couldn't risk that. I couldn't risk you. So instead you left me alone and pregnant, thinking you'd abandon me. Anger burned through the shock. That was your solution? Before Alessandro could respond, a sharp knock interrupted. Marco opened the door without waiting for permission. His face was pale. "Boss, we have a problem. Enzo Viscari's men are here. They're asking questions." His gaze flicked to Vivienne. "About the girl." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Alessandro's expression went from anguished to lethal in the space of a heartbeat. "Get them out. Back entrance. Now." "What's happening?" I demanded, pulling Vivienne closer. Alessandro looked at me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. The gala tonight, it was meant to celebrate a peace treaty between my family and the Viscari clan. But peace in my world is built on showing no weakness. He glanced at Vivienne. A secret daughter is the ultimate weakness, and Enzo Viscari just became very, very dangerous. The sound of gunfire shattered the air. Vivienne screamed. I dropped to my knees, covering her body with mine, as the world exploded into chaos. The gunfire lasted only seconds, 3 sharp cracks that sent the ballroom into pandemonium. Screams erupted, crystal shattered. The elegant facade of New York's elite dissolved into primal panic as guests dove beneath tables and scrambled toward exits. Alessandro moved with terrifying efficiency. He grabbed Vivienne, shielding her small body with his own, as he pulled us both toward the floor. His hand pressed against my back, keeping me down, while his other arm locked protectively around my daughter, our daughter, as if he'd been doing it for years instead of seconds. "Marco!" His voice cut through the chaos with absolute authority. "Secure the exits. Find the shooter." The bodyguards were already moving, weapons drawn, coordinating with the venue's security through earpieces. Alessandro stayed crouched over us, his body a barrier between Vivienne and any potential threat. I could feel his heart hammering against my shoulder blade, could smell his cologne mixed with something sharper, fear, maybe, or adrenaline. "Are you hurt?" His voice was low, urgent, directed at Vivienne. "Did anything hit you?" Vivienne shook her head, eyes wide but remarkably calm. She was trembling, but she wasn't crying. My brave, strange little girl who'd walked up to a Mafia boss and claimed him, as her father was now processing a shooting with the same intense focus she brought to everything else. "Mom?" Her voice was small. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." I pulled her from Alessandro's grip, tucking her against my chest. My hands ran over her automatically, checking for injuries I knew weren't there. Alessandro rose slowly, scanning the room with those winter-cold eyes. The chaos was already subsiding. Security had the situation contained. But I saw the calculation in his expression, the way he was assessing threats and exit routes and vulnerabilities. It was a warning shot. Marco reappeared, his face grim. Through the skylight. "The shooter's gone, but we found this." He handed Alessandro a small card. Alessandro's jaw clenched as he read it. Then he turned to me, and I saw something I'd never seen in him before, genuine, unguarded fear. "We need to leave. Now." "What?" "No. I have an event to finish. I have 200 guests. Rose." The way he said my name made me stop. That shot was meant as a message. They know about Vivienne now. Every criminal family in New York just watched our daughter announce herself to the world. His voice dropped lower. "She's not safe here. You're not safe here." Rachel pushed through the security cordon, her face pale. "Rose, the police are here. They're evacuating the building. Are you—" She stopped, taking in Alessandro's protective stance, the way his hand hovered near Vivienne as if he couldn't quite stop himself from touching her. "I need you to finish here," I told her, my voice steadier than I felt. "Handle the police. Handle the guests. Tell them there was a security threat, that everyone's safe." "Rose, what are you—" "Trust me." I squeezed her hand. "I'll call you in an hour, I promise." Rachel looked like she wanted to argue, but she nodded. As she disappeared back into the chaos, Alessandro's hand closed gently around my elbow. "There's a car waiting. Service entrance." His eyes met mine. "I know you have no reason to trust me. I know I have no right to ask this. But please, Rose, let me get you both somewhere safe. Let me explain everything. And then, if you want to walk away, I won't stop you." I should have refused. Should have grabbed Vivienne and run as far from Alessandro Moretti as possible. But I looked at my daughter, at the fear she was trying so hard to hide, at the way she kept glancing at Alessandro, as if afraid he'd disappear again, and I made a choice I'd probably regret. 1 hour, I said. You get 1 hour to explain 8 years of silence. Relief flickered across his face. "Thank you." The service corridor was empty, cleared by Alessandro's security. We moved quickly, Vivian's hand tight in mine, Alessandro slightly ahead of us, alert to every shadow and sound. Outside, 3 black SUVs waited, engines running. Joseph, the man who'd brought Duke to my old veterinary clinic in another lifetime, stood by the middle vehicle. He nodded to Alessandro, then opened the door for us. "Ma'am," he said quietly. There was something like apology in his eyes. I climbed in, pulling Vivian onto my lap despite her protests that she was too big. Alessandro slid in beside us, and the door closed with a heavy finality. Through the tinted windows, I watched the Astoria Grand Hotel recede, taking with it any illusion that my carefully constructed life was still intact. Alessandro pulled out his phone, speaking in rapid Italian. Vivian watched him with that intense focus, cataloging every detail. When he finished the call, silence filled the car thick and suffocating. Finally, Vivian spoke. "Are we in danger because of me?" Alessandro's expression cracked. "No, Piccola, you're in danger because of me." The Moretti estate materialized from the darkness like something out of a Gothic novel, all stone and iron gates and security cameras that tracked our approach with red blinking eyes. We'd been driving for over an hour, leaving the city lights behind for the shadowed mountains of the Catskills. Vivienne had fallen asleep against my shoulder, exhausted by adrenaline crash. I stroked her curls automatically. My other hand pressed against the window, watching our escape route disappear behind us. "We're here," Alessandro said quietly. The gates swung open soundlessly. Floodlights illuminated manicured gardens and a mansion that looked more like a fortress, beautiful, imposing, and utterly isolated. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their presence a stark reminder that this wasn't a home. It was a stronghold. Joseph opened the door. Alessandro reached for Vivienne, and I pulled her closer instinctively. "Let me carry her," he said. "Please." The rawness in his voice made me hesitate. Then I nodded, watching as he lifted our daughter with surprising gentleness. She stirred briefly, murmured something unintelligible, and settled against his chest. His expression transformed wonder and grief, and something so tender it made my throat tight. This was what I'd stolen from him, or what he'd stolen from himself. I couldn't decide which truth hurt more. Inside, the mansion was all dark wood and expensive art. A woman in her 50s appeared, gray hair pulled into a neat bun, kind eyes that took in the situation with practiced efficiency. "Mrs. Chen will show you to your rooms," Alessandro said. "I'll have clothes brought up. Food, if you're hungry. Whatever you need." "What I need," I said, my voice low so I wouldn't wake Vivienne, "are answers. Real ones. Not in an hour. Now." Alessandro's jaw clenched. He looked at Vivienne, then at Mrs. Chen. "Second floor, east wing, the blue suite. Make sure she has everything." Mrs. Chen took Vivienne from his arms, and I watched my daughter disappear up the stairs with a stranger. Every instinct screamed to follow, but I forced myself to stay, to face this, to finally hear the truth. Alessandro led me to a study lined with books and dark leather. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking if I wanted one, handed me one, and downed his own in a single swallow. "Talk," I said. "Now." He poured another glass. 9 years ago, you were singing at a jazz club in the village. The Blue Note." I remembered. Of course I remembered. It had been a Thursday night, half-empty room, and I'd been singing Ella Fitzgerald when the men in suits walked in. "I was there on business," Alessandro continued, his back to me, staring out the window at nothing. "A meeting with a supplier who'd been skimming from my father's operations. It was supposed to be simple, a conversation, a warning. But the man panicked, pulled a gun. My hand tightened around the whiskey glass. I remember the gunshots. I remember hiding behind the piano. You saw too much." Alessandro turned to face me, and in his eyes I saw old pain. "You saw the man die. You saw my face. You were a witness to a murder I didn't commit but couldn't distance myself from. So you were supposed to what? Kill me too?" "Yes." The word hung between us like a blade. "My father ordered me to ensure your silence. Permanently." I felt the blood drain from my face. "But you didn't." "I couldn't." His voice cracked. "I went back the next night. Told myself I was just checking, making sure you hadn't gone to the police. But you were singing again. This jazz standard I'd never heard before, and you looked so..." He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "I stayed for your whole set, and then I came back the next night. And the next. You never said anything about the shooting." I convinced my father you were no threat, that you'd been too scared to see anything useful, that killing you would draw more attention than letting you live. He met my eyes. It was the first time I'd ever successfully lied to Don Moretti. The memories flooded back, Alessandro appearing night after night, always sitting in the back, always alone. The night he finally introduced himself, using a fake name I'd seen through immediately. The way he'd made me laugh despite everything, despite the darkness I could sense in him even then. "We had 3 months," I whispered. 3 months of you pretending to be someone you weren't. I wasn't pretending. The intensity in his voice made me look up. Everything I was with you, that was real. That was the person I wanted to be. I was planning to leave, Rose. I had money hidden, documents forged. I was going to take you away from New York, start over somewhere my father couldn't reach us. What happened? He found out. Alessandro's hands clenched into fists. One of his men saw us together, followed me back to your apartment, reported everything to my father. I remembered that morning, the last morning. Alessandro leaving at dawn, kissing me goodbye, promising to call later. He'd seemed distracted, tense, but I'd attributed it to lack of sleep. Don Moretti gave me a choice, Alessandro said, his voice flat now, emotionless. Come home and take my place in the family, or he'd have you killed. Not quickly, not painlessly. He described in detail what he'd do to you, how long he'd make it last. The whiskey glass shook in my hand. I set it down carefully. He said if I tried to warn you, if I tried to run with you, he'd know. He had people watching. The only way to keep you safe was to disappear completely. To make you believe I'd abandoned you so you'd move on. Forget about me. Never look back. I tried to find you, I said, and hated how my voice broke. For months, Alessandro, I called everyone, searched everywhere. I know. He pulled out his phone, pulled up a file. I've had people watching you, from a distance, making sure you were safe, that my father never went back on his word. He showed me the screen, photos, dozens of them. Me, pregnant, leaving my apartment. Me with baby Vivienne. Me at veterinary school, at work, at the park. Years of surveillance, years of him watching from the shadows. You knew, I breathed. You knew about her. I found out 3 months after she was born. One of my men sent me a photo you pushing a stroller in Central Park. His voice was raw. I wanted to come to you. Every single day, I wanted to come back. But my father was still alive. The threat was still real. When did he die? 2 years ago. Alessandro's expression hardened. Natural causes. Heart attack. But by then, I was in too deep. I'd taken over the family, made enemies, created new threats. Coming back into your life would have just painted a target on your back. So you stayed away. The anger was bleeding back now, cutting through the shock. You let me raise her alone, let her grow up thinking her father didn't want her. I was trying to protect you. You were making my choices for me. I stood, pacing, just like you're doing now, just like you've always done. You decided I was better off without you. You decided Vivienne was safer not knowing her father. You never once asked what I wanted. What did you want? The question came out desperate. Tell me, Rose. What would you have chosen if I'd told you the truth 9 years ago? I opened my mouth, closed it, because I didn't know. If he'd told me his Mafia boss father had ordered my death, would I have run? Would I have stayed? Would I have believed him? A soft sound made us both turn. Vivienne stood in the doorway, wearing pajamas that were too big for her hair still messy from sleep. I heard voices, she said quietly. Then, with that devastating directness she'd inherited from both of us. So what happens now? Alessandro looked at our daughter, really looked at her for the first time. I watched his carefully constructed walls crumble as he took in her sleep-mussed curls, her bare feet, the way she stood with one hip cocked in unconscious imitation of me. His expression transformed into something so achingly tender I had to look away. Now, he said, his voice gentle in a way I'd never heard. I protect both of you, however long it takes, whatever it costs. We don't need your protection, I said, but it sounded hollow even to me. We've been fine without you. Alessandro's eyes met mine, and in them I saw grim certainty. You needed my protection the moment Vivienne announced our connection in a room full of my enemies. Every rival family in New York now knows I have a daughter, a weakness they can exploit. He looked at Vivienne. I'm sorry, Piccola. I'm sorry for what I've brought into your life. A sharp knock interrupted. Marco entered without waiting for permission, his face grave. "Boss, we have a problem." "Enzo Vescari's men are at the south gate," Marco said, his voice tight with controlled urgency. "They're asking questions about the girl." Alessandro's entire demeanor shifted. The vulnerability he'd shown moments ago vanished, replaced by the cold authority of a man who'd survived in a world where weakness meant death. "How many?" "4 vehicles, maybe 15 men." Marco's eyes flicked to Vivienne, then back to Alessandro. "They say they just want to talk. Extend congratulations on your unexpected family news." "Vescari doesn't congratulate. He calculates." Alessandro's jaw clenched. "The treaty is apparently worth less than we thought." I stepped forward, fear sharpening into anger. "Someone want to explain what's happening? Who is Enzo Vescari, and why does he care about my daughter?" Alessandro turned to me, and I saw something dangerous in his eyes. Tonight's gala was meant to celebrate a peace treaty between the Moretti and Vescari families. 2 years of negotiation, built on very carefully maintained balance of power. He glanced at Vivienne. "A secret daughter destroys that balance. It shows vulnerability, weakness. In my world, weakness is opportunity." "Opportunity for what?" "Leverage." Marco's voice was flat. "A child can be taken, used to force concessions, territory, business agreements, or simply eliminated to prove a point." The room tilted. I reached for Vivienne, pulling her close. "You're talking about my daughter like she's a target." Alessandro's voice was gentle, but unflinching. "Because that's what she is now. I'm sorry, Rose. But the moment she walked up to me in that ballroom, she became the most valuable piece on a very dangerous chessboard." "Then we leave." I grabbed Vivienne's hand. "We go back to our apartment, pack, disappear, change our names. You said your father's dead. You said the threat was gone. My father's threat was gone, but I made new enemies taking his place." Alessandro moved toward us, and I saw genuine fear in his face. "Rose, I have 7 crime families watching my every move. They tolerate my authority because I'm strong, because I show no weakness. A secret child I've never protected, never acknowledged." The sound of gunfire cut through his words. Not the controlled shots from the ballroom earlier. This was sustained, aggressive automatic weapons shredding the night. Vivienne screamed. I dropped to the floor, covering her body with mine as windows exploded inward. Glass rained down like deadly snow. Alessandro was moving before my mind could process the threat. He grabbed us both, hauling us toward the door as Marco and his men returned fire. The study's oak panels splintered. A painting crashed from the wall. "Joseph." Alessandro's voice cut through the chaos. "East corridor. Now." Joseph appeared from nowhere, weapon drawn, his calm efficiency terrifying. "Cars are ready. 3 minutes to extraction." Alessandro lifted Vivienne, who'd gone rigid with shock, and pulled me forward. We burst into the hallway as more gunfire erupted behind us. I caught a glimpse of Marco directing guards, his face cold and focused. The world had narrowed to immediate survival. Alessandro's hand tight around my wrist, Vivienne's face pressed against his shoulder, the sound of our footsteps echoing off marble floors. We passed fleeing staff, Mrs. Chen shepherding other household workers toward a safe room. None of this felt real. "Through the kitchen," Joseph directed, leading us down a service stairwell. The sounds of battle faded slightly, replaced by the harsh rasp of our breathing. The kitchen was chaos, staff abandoning half-prepared meals, pots still steaming on the stove. We crashed through toward a service exit. Joseph and 2 other guards flanked us, moving with military precision. Outside, 3 black SUVs waited, engines running, doors open. Alessandro pushed us toward the middle vehicle. I climbed in, reaching for Vivienne, but he was faster, settling her on his lap, his body positioned between her and the window. Joseph slid into the driver's seat. "Go, go, go." We were moving before my door fully closed. The estate grounds blurred past. I heard more gunfire distant now, but no less terrifying. Then we were through the gates, accelerating onto mountain roads with a violence that threw me against the seat. A bullet shattered the rear window. I screamed. Alessandro covered Vivienne completely, his body a shield. Glass peppered the interior. The SUV swerved, Joseph cursing, accelerating harder. I twisted around, saw blood on Alessandro's shoulder, darker than the black fabric of his jacket. "You're shot," I said, my voice high and strange. "It's nothing." He didn't move, didn't stop protecting Vivienne. "Are you hurt?" I checked myself automatically. No, I don't think so. Vivienne? His voice gentled. Are you okay, Piccola? Vivienne pulled back slightly, her face pale but eerily calm. She looked at the blood on his shoulder with the clinical focus she brought to everything. You got shot. Just grazed. Alessandro's smile was strained. I'm fine. Are you hurt anywhere? She shook her head, but I reached for her anyway, hands shaking as I checked her for injuries. No blood, no wounds, just my daughter, impossibly composed in the middle of a nightmare. Joseph took corners at speeds that made my stomach lurch. Behind us, one of the SUVs returned fire. I watched through the shattered rear window as muzzle flashes lit the darkness. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. Alessandro made rapid calls in Italian, his voice hard and controlled, despite the blood seeping through his jacket. He barked orders, coordinates, threats. The man who'd looked at Vivienne with such tenderness minutes ago had vanished, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Where are we going? I demanded when he ended the third call. Somewhere safer. His eyes met mine. My estate in the Catskills. It's more secure, more isolated. Viscari's men won't follow us there. You can't just kidnap us. I just saved your lives. His voice went cold. Viscari was going to take her Rose, use her to destroy me, or kill her to prove he could. Those were your options. Would you prefer I'd left you there? I wanted to argue, to rage at him for dragging us into this hell, but Vivienne's hand found mine, squeezing tight, and I couldn't find the words, because he was right. We'd been seconds from death or abduction, and Alessandro had gotten us out. The pursuit faded. Joseph took a complex series of turns, doubling back, losing any remaining tail. After 20 minutes, he finally slowed to something approaching normal speed. We're clear, boss. Alessandro exhaled slowly, finally relaxing his protective stance over Vivienne. He touched her face gently. Truly okay? She nodded, then with devastating honesty. I'm scared. I know. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. An hour later, we approached the estate, a sprawling stone fortress hidden in the mountains, surrounded by walls and gates and security measures that would make a prison envious. Floodlights illuminated our approach. Armed guards waved us through multiple checkpoints. The gates closed behind us with a heavy final clang. I looked at those gates, at the guards, at the mansion that was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Then I looked at Alessandro, at the blood on his shoulder and the grim determination in his eyes. We're prisoners here, I said quietly. You're safe here, he met my gaze. There's a difference. But as I watched those gates lock us in, I wondered if he was right. Dawn came too quickly, painting the Catskill Mountains in shades of gold and rose that seemed obscene against the violence of the previous night. I stood at the window of my assigned bedroom luxurious prison cell would be more accurate, and watched the estate wake up. It was beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. Sprawling gardens stretched toward a tree line, meticulously maintained despite the season. Stone pathways wound between fountains and sculptures. In different circumstances, it might have been peaceful. But security cameras tracked every angle. Armed guards patrolled in pairs, weapons visible. And when I tested the window earlier, I'd found it locked from the outside. The door had a guard posted polite but immovable when I'd tried to leave at 3 a.m. We were prisoners in a gilded cage. Mom? Vivienne's voice came from the adjoining room. Can I explore? I found her already dressed in clothes that had appeared overnight jeans and a soft sweater that fit perfectly. Someone had been paying attention. Stay where I can see you, I said, too tired to argue. Mrs. Chen appeared with breakfast, fresh pastries, fruit, coffee that smelled like heaven. She smiled warmly at Vivienne. The library is on the second floor, dear, and there's an art studio in the east wing if you'd like to draw. Vivienne's eyes lit up. Before I could stop her, she was gone, sneakers squeaking on marble floors. I followed, coffee in hand, tracking her through the mansion. She moved through Alessandro's world with wonder instead of fear, touching expensive furniture, examining oil paintings that probably cost more than my yearly income. She paused at a Monet, a water lily piece that belonged in a museum, and studied it with the intense focus she brought to her own sketches. It's beautiful, she breathed. It's stolen, I muttered, then immediately regretted it when she turned those knowing eyes on me. Is Alessandro a bad man? The question gutted me. I don't know, baby. I don't know anymore. I found him an hour later in his study, a doctor stitching his shoulder with practiced efficiency. Alessandro sat shirtless, his back to me, and I could see scars crisscrossing his skin, a map of violence that made bile rise in my throat. "You should knock," he said without turning. "Your guard let me in." "Because I told him to." Alessandro dismissed the doctor with a nod, then reached for a clean shirt. He moved carefully, favoring the injured shoulder. "How is she?" "Exploring your fortress like it's Disneyland. She's not afraid. She should be afraid. Would you prefer she be traumatized?" The calm rationality in his voice snapped something in me. "How long do you expect to keep us here?" Alessandro buttoned his shirt slowly, each movement deliberate, "As long as it takes to neutralize the threat." "And how long is that? Days? Weeks?" "Alessandro, I have a business, clients, a life. You have a target on your back." He turned to face me, and I saw exhaustion in the lines around his eyes. "Viscari won't stop now. He knows about Vivian. Every rival family in New York knows I have a daughter I've never protected, never acknowledged. That makes her valuable, vulnerable." I gripped my coffee cup so hard I thought it might shatter. "What else should I know? What kind of danger is my daughter in because of you?" Alessandro moved to the window, staring out at his controlled domain. The Moretti family controls half of New York's underground operations. Shipping, waste management, construction contracts, union influence, were legitimate on paper, but the foundation— he paused. "The foundation is built on violence and fear. And the Vescari family wants what we have: territory, influence, power. We've been at war on and off for 3 decades. 2 years ago, after my father died, I negotiated a treaty. Peace, through mutual recognition of boundaries." His jaw clenched. "But peace in my world is built on showing no weakness. A secret heir, especially a vulnerable child, is the perfect pressure point." "She's 8 years old," I whispered. "I know." Alessandro's voice went quiet. "That's exactly why she stays here. Why I have 20 armed guards and a security system that could protect the president. Why I won't let her out of my sight until Viscari is neutralized." "You mean killed?" "I mean no longer a threat." He met my eyes. "I won't apologize for doing whatever it takes to keep her safe. Even if it means keeping her prisoner?" "Even then." The door burst open. Vivian stood there, still in her green velvet dress from last night she'd apparently refused Mrs. Chen's offer of new clothes, her face bright with excitement that seemed horrifically out of place. "There's a library with a ladder that slides. And a piano? Can I try the piano?" Then, as if remembering basic needs, "Also, I'm hungry, and I like my room. Can I stay?" The innocence of her question against Alessandro's talk of neutralizing threats made me want to scream or laugh or both. Alessandro's expression transformed. "You can stay as long as you want, Piccola. And yes, you can play the piano. Do you know how?" "Mom's been teaching me. But we can't afford our own piano, so I practice on the keyboard at school." Something flickered in Alessandro's eyes, pain, maybe, or regret. "We'll practice together after lunch, if your mother says it's okay." Vivienne turned those pleading eyes on me. I wanted to refuse, to maintain distance, to protect her from getting attached to a man who lived in a world of violence. But I was so tired of making all the hard choices alone. "After lunch," I conceded. Dinner was a strange, tense affair. We ate in a formal dining room that could seat 20, just the 3 of us at one end of a massive table. Mrs. Chen had prepared Vivian's favorites, somehow knowing she loved pasta and hated mushrooms, and Alessandro tried, awkwardly, to make conversation. "What grade are you in?" "3rd. I'm good at reading and art. Math is harder." "Your mother was always good at music. You inherit her talent." Vivian considered this, then with devastating directness. "Did you love my mom?" Alessandro's fork paused halfway to his mouth. His eyes met mine across the table. "Yes, very much." "Why didn't you come back?" "Because I thought staying away would keep her safe." That was dumb. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Alessandro actually laughed a rough, surprised sound. "You're right. It was dumb. Do you have other kids?" "No. Just you." Vivienne processed this, cataloging information. "Are you going to stay this time? Or are you going to leave again?" The question hung in the air. Alessandro set down his fork, his full attention on our daughter. "I'm not leaving," he said quietly. "Not ever again. Even if you and your mother decide you want nothing to do with me, I'll still be here, watching, protecting, making sure you're safe." "That's kind of creepy," Vivienne observed. "Vivienne!" I scolded, but Alessandro was laughing again. She's not wrong. Later, after I'd read to Vivienne in her enormous bedroom complete with a canopy bed that belonged in a fairy tale, she asked the question I'd been dreading. Are we going to stay here? I stroked her hair, searching for truth in a situation that had none. I don't know, baby. I think he's sad, she said, her voice drowsy. Like he's been sad for a long time, like you when you look at his pictures. The observation pierced through all my carefully constructed defenses. Sleep now. We'll figure it out in the morning. But when she finally dozed off, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my window, watching Alessandro walk the grounds alone despite the late hour and his injured shoulder. His hands were shoved in his pockets, his shoulders bowed under the weight of choices that had brought us here. He looked exactly how Vivienne described. Sad. Bone-deep. Soul-crushing sad. And despite everything, despite the danger and the lies and the 8 years of silence, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in nearly a decade. I felt sorry for him. 3 days became a strange sort of limbo. We fell into routines that felt both surreal and oddly domestic: breakfast together in the sun-filled conservatory, Vivienne's lessons with the tutor Alessandro had somehow procured overnight, careful conversations that circled around the massive truths we weren't ready to address. I watched Alessandro teach Vivienne chess on the 4th afternoon, both of them bent over an antique board that probably belonged in a museum. He explained strategies with patience I didn't know he possessed, never condescending, treating her 8-year-old questions with genuine respect. But why can't the pawn move backward? Vivienne demanded. Because pawns can only move forward. They're committed to their path. Alessandro moved his knight. Unlike other pieces, they can't retreat. They have to keep going, even when it's dangerous. That seems unfair. It is, but sometimes the weakest piece can become the most powerful. He demonstrated a pawn reaching the opposite side. If a pawn makes it all the way across, it can become a queen. Vivienne's eyes lit up. She moved her pawn deliberately forward. Then I want all my pawns to be queens. Alessandro laughed, a real laugh, unguarded and warm. When Vivienne actually checkmated him 20 minutes later through a combination of luck and stubborn refusal to follow conventional strategy, his pride was unmistakable. You're a natural, he said, ruffling her hair. Mom says I get my stubbornness from my dad. Vivienne grinned up at him. I guess she was right. I watched from the doorway, something in my chest cracking open. This was what I'd stolen from Vivienne, not just a father, but this. The easy affection, the shared joy, the sense of being known by someone who carried half her DNA. And I'd stolen it from Alessandro too. 8 years of her childhood he'd never get back. That night, I couldn't sleep. The mansion was too quiet, too heavy with security and secrets. I wandered downstairs, drawn by a light still burning in Alessandro's study. He sat surrounded by papers and photographs, his face drawn with exhaustion. Surveillance photos covered his desk, grainy images of men, buildings, vehicles, the infrastructure of violence. You should be sleeping, he said without looking up. So should you. I moved closer, looking at the photos. Vescari? His operations, his men, his routines. Alessandro rubbed his face, looking for weaknesses, ways to end this without more bloodshed. Is that possible? In your world? I don't know. He leaned back, finally meeting my eyes. I never wanted this, you know. The family business. I wanted. He trailed off. What did you want? To be normal. To finish college, get some boring job, maybe play piano on weekends. His smile was bitter. To wake up next to you and argue about whose turn it was to make coffee. The specificity of the image hurt. I sat in the chair across from him, suddenly exhausted. Tell me about the last 8 years. Your version. So he did. He told me about taking over after his father's death, about consolidating power while trying to minimize the violence, about legitimate businesses he'd built alongside the illegal ones, trying to slowly transition the family toward something less toxic, about the enemies he'd made, the alliances he'd navigated, the constant weight of responsibility for hundreds of people whose livelihoods depended on his decisions. And you? He asked quietly. What were your 8 years like? I told him about the pregnancy, the terror of being alone, the morning sickness that lasted all day, the way Vivienne had kicked constantly as if already impatient with the world, about giving birth with only Rachel in the delivery room, about those first terrifying weeks of motherhood when I didn't know what I was doing. I had to give up singing, I said. The late nights, the unreliable income, it wasn't sustainable with a baby, so I started planning events. Corporate functions at first, then weddings, then the high-end galas. I laughed without humor. I needed stability, something I could control. I thought leaving would keep you safe. Alessandro's voice was rough. Instead, I just left you alone. You did. The words came out softer than I intended, with less anger than they deserved. Alessandro was quiet for a long moment. Then, I've kept track of you, both of you, from a distance. I knew about Vivienne 3 months after she was born. The world stopped. What? A routine surveillance report. One of my men saw you in Central Park with a stroller. He took photos, ran them through facial recognition. Alessandro's hands clenched. I knew she was mine the moment I saw her face. Fury ignited in my chest. You knew? For nearly 8 years, you knew you had a daughter. And knowing kept you both safe. He stood, moving toward me with desperate urgency. Rose, don't you understand? As long as no one else knew, as long as there was no connection between us, you were untouchable. My enemies couldn't use you against me. You got to have a normal life. She got to have a childhood. We had a right to know. Tears burned my eyes. She asked about you constantly, asked why her father didn't want her. And I had to lie, had to make up stories because I didn't know the truth. You could have told me. You could have made you targets 8 years earlier? Alessandro's voice cracked. Rose, the moment I entered your lives, I made you vulnerable. Every enemy I have now knows about Vivienne. Every rival family sees her as leverage or a weakness to exploit. I gave you 8 years of safety. 8 years where she got to be a normal child. She wasn't normal. She was fatherless. I know. The simple admission, the raw pain in his voice, deflated my anger. I made the wrong choice. Again. I keep making the wrong choices when it comes to you. A knock interrupted. Marco entered, his face carefully neutral. Boss, the Vescari family's moving. 3 of their operations just went dark. Could be preparation for something bigger. Alessandro nodded. Double the perimeter guards, and I want. Already handled. Marco's eyes flicked to me, something unreadable in his expression. Then back to Alessandro. Get some rest. I'll monitor the situation. After he left, I watched Alessandro's face, saw the trust there, the reliance on a man he considered family. But I'd also seen something else. A look exchanged between them, tension in Marco's shoulders, the way his eyes had lingered on me just a second too long. Alessandro, I said carefully, how well do you know Marco? He's been with me for 15 years. My father's consigliere before he was mine. Alessandro frowned. Why? Just be careful, that's all. 2 nights later, insomnia drove me to the window again. The gardens were beautiful under moonlight, peaceful except for the guards on patrol. And Marco, standing near the south wall, phone pressed to his ear, his body language tense and furtive. I watched him for 20 minutes. Watched him pace, argue with whoever was on the other end, check over his shoulder repeatedly. Every instinct I'd honed as a single mother, the hypervigilance that kept Vivienne safe, screamed warning. I found Alessandro in his study the next morning. I think Marco is leaking information. His reaction was immediate denial. Marco's been with me for 15 years. He's family. Family betrays. I cut him off. Alessandro, I saw him last night, on the phone in the garden at 2 a.m., looking like he was planning something he didn't want anyone to know about. You're mistaken. Am I? I challenged. You said yourself Vescari has been too well informed. How did he know exactly when to attack? How did his men know to ask about Vivienne specifically? I watched doubt creep into Alessandro's expression. He didn't want to believe it, but he was too smart to ignore the possibility. I'll have it checked, he said finally, quietly. The answer came within hours. Alessandro's tech expert, a slight man named Chen, who looked too young to be so dangerous, traced Marco's communications going back months. Encrypted calls to Vescari operatives. Information traded for promises of power and position. Alessandro's face went cold as Chen presented the evidence. Then he dismissed everyone and called Marco to his study. I watched from the doorway as Marco entered, his expression shifting when he saw the printed call logs on Alessandro's desk. You want to explain these? Alessandro's voice was deadly quiet. Marco didn't deny it, didn't even try. You've gone soft. A secret daughter? Sentiment toward a woman who makes you weak? He shook his head. Your father would be ashamed. The family needs stronger leadership. So you betrayed me, sold information to our enemies, put my daughter in danger. Alessandro stood slowly. How long, Marco? Since your father died, Since you started talking about peace and legitimacy and going soft. Marco's hand moved toward his jacket. The old ways worked. The old ways kept us powerful. He pulled a gun. But Alessandro was faster, his weapon already drawn, already aimed at Marco's chest. For a moment, they stood frozen, 15 years of loyalty shattered in the space between them. "Get out," Alessandro said, his voice like ice. "If I ever see you again, I'll kill you. But I'm giving you this one chance because of what we used to be. Take it and run." Marco lowered his gun slowly, back toward the door. "Viscari knows everything now. The estate location, your security protocols, the girl. Her routines, her room, her vulnerabilities." His smile was cold. "You're already dead, Alessandro. You just don't know it yet." He left. Alessandro immediately called Joseph. "Full security lockdown. No one in or out without my personal clearance. Move Rose and Vivienne to the safe wing. And get me emergency evacuation plans. Multiple routes." Joseph nodded and disappeared. Alessandro turned to me, and I saw fear in his eyes. Real, unguarded fear. "The enemy isn't at the gates anymore," he said quietly. "They already know how to get in." The alarms shattered sleep at 2 a.m., a mechanical shriek that sent adrenaline flooding through my veins before my mind fully processed what was happening. Then I heard it, the distinctive crack of gunfire, closer than the last attack, more sustained. They were here. My door burst open. Alessandro stood there in tactical gear I'd never seen before, black vest, weapon holstered at his hip, face hard with lethal focus. But his eyes held fear. "Get Vivienne. Panic room. Now." I was moving before he finished speaking, running down the hallway in bare feet, my heart hammering against my ribs. More gunfire erupted outside, automatic weapons tearing through the night. Glass shattered somewhere below us. Vivienne's door was already open. She sat up in bed, eyes wide but eerily calm, clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 2. "Is it the bad men?" Her voice was small but steady. "Yes, baby." I grabbed her, pulled her against me. "We need to go somewhere safe. Right now." She didn't argue, didn't cry, just wrapped her arms around my neck as I lifted her, her legs locking around my waist like she was 5 again instead of 8. Alessandro appeared behind us, ushering us toward his study with Joseph and 2 other guards flanking us. The sounds of battle intensified, shouting in Italian. Return fire from Alessandro's men. An explosion that made the walls shake. "How many?" Alessandro barked into his comm. "At least 20 hostiles. Viscari's best." Joseph's voice was tight. They knew exactly where to hit us. Marco's betrayal. The information he'd sold. This was the price. Alessandro's study looked untouched, books still lined the shelves, his desk neat despite the chaos. He moved to the bookcase on the east wall, pressed something I couldn't see. The entire section swung inward, revealing a steel door with a biometric lock. "Fingerprint and retinal scan," he explained, already positioning himself. "Only 3 people have access. Me, Joseph, and as of 10 minutes ago, you." The door opened onto a room that looked like a bunker, steel-reinforced walls, banks of monitors showing security feeds, shelves stocked with water and supplies, communications, equipment lined one wall. This wasn't just a safe room. This was a command center designed to withstand a siege. "Stay here." Alessandro ushered us inside. "Don't open this door for anyone but me. If someone tries to breach, there's a secondary exit behind that panel." He pointed. "It leads to the tunnels beneath the estate. Joseph knows where they come out." "Alessandro." My voice caught. He cupped my face with one hand, his touch gentle despite the violence erupting around us. "I will come back for you, both of you. I promise. Don't you dare die on us." The words came out fierce. Not now. Not when I couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't know how to finish it. Alessandro's eyes met mine, and something passed between us. Understanding maybe, or possibility, or just the recognition that we'd wasted too much time already. "I have too much to live for now," he said quietly. Then he was gone, the door sealing behind him with a heavy, final sound. Locks engaged automatically, mechanical bolts sliding into place with efficient precision. Vivienne and I were alone. The panic room's monitors showed multiple feeds, the gates, the grounds, the mansion's interior. I watched Alessandro's men take defensive positions, watched muzzle flashes in the darkness as Viscari's forces advanced. "Mom?" Vivienne's voice was thin. "Is Alessandro going to be okay?" I pulled her onto my lap, wrapped my arms around her. I don't know, baby. Are we going to be okay? Yes. That answer came easier. Alessandro had built this room to withstand anything. We were safe here. But safe meant useless, meant unable to help, meant watching the man who'd abandoned us fight for his life because he'd tried to protect us. The irony wasn't lost on me. He's fighting for us, I said, more to myself than to Vivian. That has to count for something. The battle stretched on. 20 minutes became an hour, became 2. I held Vivian and watched the monitors, my heart stopping every time I caught a glimpse of Alessandro on the feeds. He moved with brutal efficiency, covering his men, calling commands, fighting with the cold precision of someone who'd done this too many times. This was his world. Violence and strategy and survival. This was what he'd tried to shield me from 9 years ago. Vivian fell asleep eventually, exhausted by fear and adrenaline crash. I held her against my chest and watched Alessandro almost die. It happened on the East Lawn feed. He was covering Joseph's retreat when 3 of Viscari's men flanked them. I saw the gun come up, saw Alessandro turn too slowly, saw the moment before. Joseph threw himself sideways, tackling Alessandro. The bullet meant for Alessandro's head caught Joseph in the shoulder instead. They rolled, came up shooting, took down all 3 attackers. My hands shook so badly I had to set down the water bottle I'd been holding. I was praying. I realized it suddenly, wordless, desperate prayers to a God I hadn't spoken to since Vivian was born. Prayers for Alessandro's safety. Prayers that he'd survive. Prayers that we'd have a chance to. To what? Forgive him? Try again? Figure out what remained between us after 8 years and all these lies? I loved him still. The realization hit me like physical force. Despite everything, the abandonment, the secrets, the danger he'd brought into our lives, I loved him. Maybe I'd never stopped. Maybe that was why his absence had hurt so badly. Why seeing him again had felt like being gutted. Why watching him with Vivienne these past days had cracked something open in my chest. I'd thought I'd sealed shut forever. The thought terrified me more than the gunfire outside. Finally, silence fell. The monitors showed bodies on the grounds too many to count. Alessandro's men regrouping, checking casualties, securing the perimeter. Viscari's forces were in retreat or dead. We'd survived. I waited, heart hammering, not daring to believe it was over. Minutes stretched. Then, finally, a knock on the panic room door. "Rose," Alessandro's voice, rough with exhaustion. "It's me. It's over." I hesitated, hand on the lock. What if it was a trap? What if they'd forced him to? "Your mother used to sing Summertime when she put you to bed," Alessandro said through the door. "Even though you told her you were too old for lullabies. You let her do it anyway because you knew it made her feel better. Something only he would know, only he could know, from watching us all those years." I opened the door. Alessandro stood there covered in blood spattered across his face, soaking through his tactical vest, staining his hands. Not all of it could be his own. He looked exhausted, wrecked, barely holding himself together. But alive. He was alive. His eyes found Vivienne first, still sleeping against my shoulder. Relief flooded his face. "Is anyone hurt?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "2 of my men. They'll survive." His gaze shifted to me, and I saw him cataloging, checking for injuries, for trauma, for damage. "Are you?" "We're fine. We're okay." He nodded, swayed slightly. I realized he was bleeding, a gash on his arm, another on his ribs visible through the torn vest. "You need a doctor." Later, he couldn't seem to stop looking at Vivienne. May I hold her?" I shifted carefully, transferring her sleeping weight to him. Alessandro gathered our daughter against his chest with infinite gentleness, his bloody hands somehow not leaving marks on her pajamas. He closed his eyes, his face crumpling with emotion he could no longer contain. Vivienne stirred, blinked awake, registered where she was cradled against Alessandro's chest and studied his face with that intense focus she brought to everything. "Did you kill people tonight?" she asked. The question hung in the air. Alessandro could have lied, could have softened it. Instead, he gave her the brutal honesty she deserved. "Yes, to protect you, to protect your mother, I did." Vivienne considered this with the gravity of someone far older than 8. Then she wrapped her small arms around his neck. "Thank you for keeping us safe." The simple acceptance, the pure, uncomplicated forgiveness from his daughter finally broke him. Alessandro's composure cracked completely. He turned his face away, but I saw his shoulders shaking, saw tears cutting tracks through the blood and grime on his face. I stepped forward, placed my hand on his back, feeling him tremble with everything he'd been holding in. "Alessandro, look at me." When he did, his eyes were swimming with tears he'd probably spent a lifetime learning not to shed. "You kept us safe," I said quietly. "That's what matters." He made a sound, half laugh, half sob. "I almost got you killed. But you didn't." I didn't know when I'd decided to forgive him. Maybe I'd been working toward it since that first night at the gala. Maybe I'd never really stopped. "You kept us safe." Alessandro pulled me close with his free arm, gathering both of us against him. We stood there in the doorway of his panic room, covered in blood and exhaustion, survivors of a battle we'd never asked to fight, and for the first time in 8 years, we felt like something that might, eventually, become a family. Dawn broke over the estate like an accusation, revealing the carnage in unforgiving detail. Broken windows gaped like wounds. Bullet holes pocked the elegant stone facade. Blood stained the marble entrance dark, arterial, already turning brown in the morning light. I stood at Vivian's window, helping her pack clothes into a bag I hoped we wouldn't need. Her hands shook as she folded her favorite sweater. "Are we leaving?" she asked quietly. "I don't know yet, baby, but we need to be ready." Alessandro's voice drifted up from below, clipped, authoritative, organizing the aftermath. I'd watched him transform over the past hour from the vulnerable man who'd wept in the panic room to the cold strategist his world demanded. The shift was seamless and terrifying. The morning briefing happened in Alessandro's war room, a space I hadn't seen before. All tactical maps and encrypted communications. Joseph stood beside him, arm in a sling, his face gray with exhaustion. Other men I recognized from the siege lined the walls. "Casualties?" Alessandro asked. "3 of ours dead, 7 wounded, 2 critical." Joseph's voice was flat. "Viscari lost 15 men, the rest retreated." "It's not over," one of the men said. "Viscari will retaliate. This was just—" "I know what this was," Alessandro cut him off. "A message, but we sent one back. Anyone else?" Joseph exchanged a glance with another guard. "We have a new problem. Franco Bellini." The name meant nothing to me, but I saw Alessandro's jaw clench. "My father's old consigliere. I thought he'd retired to Florida. He's been watching, waiting." Joseph pulled out his phone, showed Alessandro something I couldn't see. "He has Marco, took him from the safe house where we were holding him. And he's making demands." "What demands?" "Custody of the girl." The words hit me like physical force. I stepped forward from where I'd been observing in the doorway. "Custody? She's not a bargaining chip. She's not property to be negotiated over." All eyes turned to me. Alessandro's expression shifted, surprise that I'd been listening, then something like pride. "Rose is right," he said. "Bellini gets nothing. Marco betrayed us, he chose his fate. And my daughter—" he paused, the possessive catching in his throat. "My daughter stays with her mother, where she belongs." "Bellini's threatening to expose the entire operation to the FBI," Joseph continued. "Names, locations, operations, everything from the past 20 years. Then Bellini dies tonight." Alessandro's voice was cold. Final. "No." The word came out before I could stop it. "No, you can't just kill everyone who threatens us. When does it end, Alessandro? When does the violence stop?" He turned to face me fully. "It ends when everyone knows that touching my family means death. That's the only language these men understand, Rose. The only currency they respect. Is this the life you want for her?" I gestured toward the ceiling, toward where Vivienne waited. For our daughter, running from threats, living behind guards and walls, watching her father kill to keep her safe? "It's the only life I can give her." His voice cracked. "I don't know how to be anything else. I don't know how to be a father. I only know how to be—" He stopped, looked away. "A monster." The admission hung in the air. Joseph and the other men shifted uncomfortably, not used to seeing their boss vulnerable. I moved closer, lowered my voice so only Alessandro could hear. "Then learn. You have time, but not if you're dead, not if you're in prison, not if you're so deep in this world that there's no way out." "There is no way out," he said. "Rose, you don't understand." "Then make one." I grabbed his arm, forced him to look at me. "Come with me, both of you. We disappear. New names, new lives. I've done it before, built a life from nothing. I can do it again." For a moment, one crystalline, perfect moment, I saw him consider it. Saw him imagine a life where he was just Alessandro, not the head of a crime family. Where he could walk Vivian to school, argue with me about homework, be ordinary and safe and free. Then reality crashed back. They'll never stop looking. Bellini, Vescari, every enemy I've made. Running makes us vulnerable. At least here, I have resources, protection, money. Then give us a choice. My voice hardened. Let me decide if this is a life I can accept for my daughter. Don't make the decision for me like you did 9 years ago. Don't take that from me again. Alessandro flinched. Rose. After Bellini, I interrupted. After this threat is eliminated, you give me a real choice. You tell me everything, every danger, every enemy, every consequence of staying in your world. And I'll decide. Not you, me. He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. After Bellini, I promise. I have a choice too. We both turned. Vivienne stood in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her hair unbrushed. How long had she been listening? Vivienne, sweetheart, go back to your room. I choose to stay. She walked into the war room with the same fearless determination she'd shown walking up to Alessandro at the gala. I want to know my father. I want to learn chess and piano and how to be brave like him. I don't want to run away. Alessandro dropped to one knee, bringing himself to her eye level. Piccola, you don't understand what you're choosing. The danger. I was in danger last night, and you kept me safe. She touched his face with one small hand. You'll keep me safe again, right? Right? With my life, he whispered. Always. Then I'm staying. She looked at me. Mom, I'm staying. The weight of her words settled over all of us. She'd made her choice. Now I had to make mine. Alessandro rose, something shifting in his expression. The meeting with Bellini is set for tonight. Neutral ground, a warehouse in Red Hook. I'll take Joseph and 5 men. I'm coming with you. The words were out before I fully processed them. Absolutely not. You don't get to protect me anymore, I interrupted. If this is our life now, if we're doing this together, then we do it together. All of it. I need to see what you do. Who you are. I need to understand what I'm choosing. Alessandro looked like he wanted to argue, wanted to lock me in the panic room and handle it himself, but something in my expression must have convinced him. You stay in the vehicle. With Joseph. You don't get out no matter what happens. Agreed. And Rose, he caught my hand. What you're going to see tonight. It's not going to be easy. This is who I am. What I do. I know. I squeezed his fingers. That's why I need to be there. The rest of the day passed in tense preparation. Alessandro's men checked weapons, planned contingencies, studied maps of the warehouse and surrounding area. I watched it all, this machinery of violence, and tried to reconcile it with the man who'd taught Vivienne chess, who'd wept when she forgave him. As dusk fell, Alessandro found me in the library. He'd changed into dark clothes, tactical gear hidden beneath a long coat. He looked dangerous and beautiful and utterly foreign. Last chance to change your mind, he said. I'm not changing my mind. I stood, met his eyes. Let's go end this. For the first time since the gala, Alessandro smiled real and warm and edged with something that might have been hope. Together, he said. Together, I agreed. Red Hook at night looked like the set of every crime movie I'd ever seen. Abandoned warehouses, rusted shipping containers, the distant glitter of the harbor reflecting city lights. Our convoy of 3 SUVs pulled into the designated location, headlights cutting through industrial darkness. Alessandro turned to me in the back seat. You stay here, no matter what happens. I know the plan. Rose. His hand found mine. If things go wrong, Joseph will get you out. Promise me you'll let him. I couldn't make that promise, so I kissed him instead, quick and fierce and desperate. His surprise registered for a heartbeat before he kissed me back, his hand cupping my face with aching gentleness. Come back, I whispered against his mouth. Always. Then he was gone, moving with his men toward the warehouse's open loading bay. I watched through the vehicle's tinted windows as they took positions, Joseph on Alessandro's right, weapons concealed but ready, waiting. Franco Bellini arrived exactly on time. 3 black sedans, 8 men fanning out in tactical formation. And Bellini himself, late 60s, silver hair immaculately styled, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. He moved with the confidence of someone who'd never lost, who'd survived decades in a world that killed the weak. Marco stumbled beside him, hands zip-tied, face swollen and bloodied. Still alive, though. Barely. Through the comms equipment Joseph had left me, I heard everything. Alessandro Moretti. Bellini's voice was cultured, almost pleasant. You've grown into your father's role nicely, though perhaps too nicely. Bellini, you've gotten old. Age brings wisdom. Your father understood that. He understood what the family needed. Bellini gestured to Marco. Loyalty, tradition, strength without sentiment. My father understood cruelty. That's not the same thing. Isn't it? Bellini smiled. Let's discuss terms. The girl Vivienne, is it? Comes with me. I'll raise her properly, teach her the family business. In exchange, I keep your secrets buried and eliminate the Viscari problem permanently. Everyone wins. Except my daughter loses her childhood. Alessandro's voice went cold. No deal. Your other option is I kill you here and take Marco back. The standoff crystallized, both sides armed, fingers hovering near weapons. One wrong move and the warehouse would erupt into slaughter. I was moving before I consciously decided. Out of the SUV, across the cracked asphalt, walking directly into the line of fire. Joseph swore through the comms, but I was already there, stepping between Alessandro and Bellini with my heart hammering and my hands surprisingly steady. Rose, what are you? Alessandro reached for me, but I shook him off. You want to talk about Vivienne? I addressed Bellini directly. Talk to her mother. Bellini's surprise was evident. Mrs. Powell. How unexpectedly. Assertive. Vivienne is not a mob princess. She's not a bargaining chip or a legacy to be claimed. My voice carried across the warehouse. She's an 8-year-old girl who likes drawing and hates math homework. Who wants to learn piano and asks too many questions and deserves a childhood that doesn't involve men pointing guns at each other. A charming sentiment, Bellini said. But naive. She has Moretti blood. That comes with responsibilities. It comes with choices. Alessandro moved beside me, united front. My daughter will know this world, but she won't be consumed by it. She'll have options I never did. Agency. Her grandfather never allowed. Bellini laughed a dry, papery sound. You've gone soft, Alessandro. Your father would be ashamed. My father was a tyrant who destroyed everything he touched. Alessandro's voice rang with certainty. He built an empire on fear and death. If being different from him means I'm soft, then I'm soft. I'd rather be soft and have a daughter who knows her father than be strong and alone. Strong and alone kept you alive. Alive isn't the same as living. The words hung between them, philosophy debated over the barrel of potential violence. Then Alessandro's phone buzzed. He checked it, and something like satisfaction crossed his face. You should check your holdings, Bellini. Specifically your operations in Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island. Bellini's expression flickered. He pulled out his own phone, and I watched color drain from his face. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. What did you do? Bellini's voice went sharp. Joseph's been feeding information to your organization for weeks, Alessandro said. False intel, fabricated communications, carefully planted evidence. The FBI just raided 3 of your major operations simultaneously. They'll find enough to put you away for the rest of your life. You called the feds? Bellini looked genuinely shocked. You violated the code. I'm done with codes and rules and men like you deciding my family's fate. Alessandro's voice was flat. Final. You have 2 choices. Die here tonight, or run. Disappear. Leave the country, and never come back. I honestly don't care which you choose. Bellini stared at him, then at me, then at his men who were already backing toward their vehicles. The sirens were close now, maybe 5 minutes out. Your father knew how this world works, Bellini said. You'll regret this weakness. Maybe. Alessandro shrugged. But at least I'll regret it with my daughter. Can you say the same? Bellini left, shoved Marco toward us, and fled into the night with his men scrambling after him. We watched their taillights disappear toward the harbor. Alessandro approached Marco, who was barely standing. He cut the zip ties with a knife from his belt. You betrayed me, Alessandro said quietly. You deserve to die. But I'm not my father. I'm trying to be better. He stepped back. Leave New York. Leave the East Coast. If I ever see you again, I won't hesitate. Understood? Marco nodded, blood dripping from his split lip. You're making a mistake. Bellini's right, this world doesn't forgive weakness. Then I'll be the first to prove them wrong. Marco limped away, broken and defeated. Joseph and the other men returned to the vehicles. The sirens grew louder, time to leave before the FBI arrived and started asking questions. In the car, Alessandro pulled me close. I could feel him shaking, adrenaline crash or relief or both. What now? I asked. Now I dismantle everything. His voice was raw. "I'm selling the legitimate businesses, cutting ties with illegal operations. It'll take years. Some people won't accept it peacefully, but Vivienne will grow up knowing her father is trying to be better, trying to build something clean." "Can you really walk away?" I searched his face. "From all of it?" "Not completely," he admitted. "The connections, the knowledge it'll always be part of me, but I can change direction, make different choices." His hand cupped my face. "For her, for you, for the life I want instead of the one I inherited. It's going to be dangerous. I know. We might fail. I know that too." He kissed my forehead. "But I'd rather fail trying to be better than succeed at being my father." The estate welcomed us back with floodlights and guards, and Vivienne bursting through the front door in her pajamas, Mrs. Chen trying and failing to catch her. "Did you fix it?" She crashed into Alessandro's arms. "Is it over?" "We're working on it," Alessandro said. And for the first time, his voice held hope instead of resignation. She hugged me next, then grabbed both our hands. "Can we have pancakes?" "Mrs. Chen says it's too late, but it's a special occasion, right?" We made pancakes at midnight in Alessandro's massive kitchen, Vivienne conducting operations from a stool, while Alessandro and I navigated around each other with the awkward intimacy of people learning to be together again. 3 months later, Vivienne turned 9. We celebrated quietly, no gala, no crowds, just the 3 of us and Rachel and Joseph and Mrs. Chen. Alessandro had taught Vivienne to play piano, and she insisted on performing. I watched from the doorway as they sat together at the grand piano in the music room, dark heads bent close. Alessandro guided her fingers through a simple piece, patient when she stumbled, encouraging when she got it right. When she finished, she beamed up at him with such pure joy it made my chest tight. This was what we'd been denied for 8 years, what we'd almost never had. Alessandro caught my eye across the room. Over Vivienne's head he mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." I smiled. Not forgiveness, not yet. Too much had been broken for easy repair, but acceptance. A beginning, permission to try. Later, we gathered around a cake Mrs. Chen had made elaborate, covered in fondant flowers, way too much sugar. Vivienne studied the 9 candles with intense concentration. "Make a wish, Piccola," Alessandro said softly. She closed her eyes, wished with the fierce determination she brought to everything. When she opened them again, she looked at both of us, her parents, together, finally, and smiled. "I wished for this," she said. "For us to stay together." Alessandro's hand found mine under the table. Our fingers intertwined, tentative, uncertain, but holding on. "Then we'll make it come true," I promised. It wouldn't be easy. Alessandro was dismantling a criminal empire while making enemies who wouldn't let go quietly. We lived with guards and security measures, and the constant awareness that danger lurked at the edges of our new life. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. But it was ours. And standing there with Alessandro's hand in mine and our daughter blowing out her candles, I thought maybe, just maybe, that was enough.